Hi, in this video I'll be showing you the process of creating Canadian smocking. Every Canadian smocking pattern starts with the creation of a grid. I've made mine by printing out a grid shape onto a sheet of acetate, and then I've poked holes through it so that I can use my pen to mark off the points where all the squares meet. I'm using a friction pen, and this is heat erasable, so once I've finished the whole thing I can use the steam from the iron to erase all the marks that I've made. You don't have to use a grid, you could just use a ruler, but it's important to make sure that you've got right angles at each corner. So once I take off the acetate, if I can see any bits where the pen hasn't gone through, I can just fill those points in quickly. And then to make the shape that I'm doing here, I know that it's every other one and diagonal line. So I'm just going to connect the points together that I'm going to be sewing together in the next step. So for this one I'm using a piece of calico that's about the size of an A4 piece of paper, and I've only put on it the dots that I need, but I'm still going to draw a line between them so I know which point's connected to which, otherwise it's quite confusing when you have a lot of dots on one piece of calico. I'm using a black sewing thread here. You might want to use something that matches the colour of your fabric. And then here I'm just measuring out my thread. I want it to be twice the length of my forearm. That will make it easier to make sure that I don't get any knots in the thread while I'm stitching. So to start off, I'm going to tie a knot in the end of the thread. And then you can pick wherever you want to start, it doesn't matter at all. This is the process that you're repeating, so it goes in at one end of the line, then you stitch 3 times in one spot. Put your needle through the other end of the line, and then just pull that one together so they're touching. Then pinch it over like that and then sew 3 times in the same spot. So that's 1, 2, 3, and that one's done. Then you can move on to the next one. It doesn't matter where you go, whichever way you prefer to work is fine. So exactly the same process again. Just put your thread through, don't put any tension on that line that you've just done there. So 3 times in one spot, and then through to the other end, pull it together again and stitch 3 times in one spot. Other patterns, they'd show you how to stitch in different directions to create different shapes. This is one of the simplest ones. So here I've got to the end of the row, so I just treat it exactly the same as normal. Stitching in place again 3 times. And then I just move up to the next row above it. I'm right-handed, so I've turned it around because I prefer working right to left. and then you just carry on the process on the next row. You can see at this point it doesn't really look like anything. It's one of those things that takes a few rows for it to actually gain the shape that it has. So once you've got 2 rows of stitching, you can see that it is starting to have some sort of structure to it. And there you go. The process of using the same stitch over and over again can give something like a piece of calico quite a lot of structure. This is the right side of the pattern, it's bows. I prefer this side, I like the structure of it. If you were using something like chiffon, or you were using this side and you could see the stitching, you could snip it off. So you can see the difference here. The left I've left the stitches in, and on the right hand side I've cut off the connecting threads. This A4 section took about 15 minutes for me to sew. You can change the effect by using a different size grid to start with, and there's tons of different patterns that you can try.